Hello and welcome to the Kish podcast. My name is Emer McCormack.
And I'm Tony Scott. Last week's episode featuring Sunita Pushpara went quite well, Emer.
It did. Like, for our very first podcast ever in terms of the Kish podcast, the amount of listens has been phenomenal. I didn't probably expect the amount of listens, which is a great thing. And and amazing reviews as well. I checked out the Apple reviews and really happy with those. So hopefully we'll continue to do very well, Tony.
Hopefully. So did you have a nice week?
I did. I had a really nice week, and I tell you what it was, Tony. There's a local guy here called OBrien, and he is currently out of work due to COVID-19. And he got up one morning and said, what can I do for Pieta House? Because Pieta House, as you may or may not know, all of their Darkness into Light events have been cancelled around the country, which is their main stream of revenue. So essentially what he done was, he said, look, you know, what can he do in order to raise money for Pieta House? Because it's a charity very close to him. So he lives in the flats in Ringsend here in Dublin 4, and he decided that he would climb in the flats. So there's stairwells in the flats, in the complexes.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say he was doing free climbing or something.
Not free climbing, no, definitely not. Up steps to the same height of Mount Everest. And he would do it over a certain number of days. So he completed that journey last night. And I was down there because I was given a handout in terms of just doing some drone footage and some capturing some interviews and so on.
Look at you.
I know.
Emer Spielberg.
Don't be talking. It's unreal. But so I went down to give a hand, and do you know what really struck me was the sense of hope. And I will show you the drone footage when I have it completed, but there was candles on the ground laid out by the residents who live in the complex. Aww. And they spelled out hope, and they, you know, obviously was lighting on the ground, and it was just so poignant and so beautiful. And I thought, my God, there's something very, very special going on here, all in aid of Pieta House. And so that was kind of my week, was following that journey.
Well, fair play to him.
Yeah, unreal. So, and then obviously, you know, I'm involved in the rowing club, St. Patrick's Rowing Club in Ringsend. Mm-hmm. And we kind of thought, well, what can we do to row in behind him and to support his cause? So we said, well, why don't we do a 14-kilometre row, each person on a Concept 2 rowing machine?
Oh, hold on. Oh, thank God you said that. I was going to say, Emer, there's only a 2-kilometre limit.
We weren't breaking the rules. We're on a fixed rowing machine. So we all done 14,000 kilometres on the rowing erg today, which took in around about an hour to complete. And there was such a great sense of achievement. And one of the lads, unfortunately, his brother died to suicide, and you know, he spoke about it and thanked people for taking part in it. His name is John Doyle. So John, if you are listening, I want to give you a little bit of credit, because I thought it was really poignant the fact that you brought your own personal story into it. And it's really important to get the message out that it is okay not to be okay, and it doesn't have to be something that's stigmatised, you know. And I think what the residents of Ringsend and Irishtown here in Dublin have done over the past week has been phenomenal. I have seen complexes and people not only becoming neighbours, in which they already are, but actually to become family to one another. And that is very, very special to me.
I feel very inadequate after my week, after hearing all of that.
Well, I'm just lucky where I live, Tony.
It's true. It's very true. I mean, the extent of my week involved me doing something very strange. I've found a new YouTube video that I love. Oh, yeah? People unblocking drains.
What?
Yeah, that's my new YouTube thing. Watching people.
Is that equivalent to like popping spots?
Probably. Or, you know, when you see people putting Mentos in Diet Coke.
Oh my God, does that work?
And it explodes. Yeah, it does work. We shall try it when we get together.
Okay, we'll do that.
Do it in your house.
At a distance, at an elbow shove. Is that what they call it or something? Yeah.
So yeah, and lots of people have been getting in touch on Facebook as well, with lots of thumbs ups and likes and everything, and on Instagram. So thank you very much for getting in touch that way as well.
It's great.
We appreciate it all.
Absolutely.
And it leads me to this week's episode, Emer, where Chris Kerr is our chosen target.
Yeah, and you know what, Tony? It's actually very apt that this came about after the week that I've had here in the local community in Ringsend, because Chris comes to us today telling us a story about his struggle with his own mental health after the death of his father, and his own, I suppose, experience of anxiety and how he dealt with that. So I had a great chat with him, and I really felt I got to know Chris. Chris is a former Antrim goalkeeper, so he would have been at the very, very height of his career in terms of inter-county football, and he also plays currently still for St. Gall's in Belfast, and hopefully soon, please God, for him that he makes a return back to inter-county football again. But you know, he's had to deal with quite a lot. And this isn't really a story about sport. It's a story about someone's struggle with how they overcame a really hard situation. So this is Chris Kerr. And I started off asking him, who is Chris Kerr?
Who is Chris Kerr? God. $1 million question. Well, I suppose I'm 33. I'm from Belfast originally. Moved house recently, or just to Armagh, due to pressure from the other half. All good pressure, but probably better known for playing for St. Gall's and Antrim GA teams. And that's basically it. Just a normal sort of Gaelic footballer. Just work for NIE Networks. Yeah. So
how did you get involved in football? Was it through your family? Was your mum and dad into GA, or how did that all come about?
It was a weird one in Belfast compared to probably your rural club teams throughout Ireland, really. I was 5 when I first started playing for St. Gall's, so you're talking the early 90s, and that was just before and during sort of the end of the Troubles in the north. So St. Gall's actually used to go around in buses and literally pick kids up and bring them to training. And a bus could just pull into the street and there'd be 10, 15 kids jumping on a bus. Nowadays you'd be freaking out and where your kids are going or whatever, but that was just the way. And we used to just go training every Saturday, and then that was basically it.
And was there any animosity shown towards you in relation to joining a GA club or anything like that with the divide that was in Belfast at that given time?
No, well, as I say, I live in West Belfast, and it's predominantly nationalist / Republican area. So GA was pretty much the forefront of it. There's the guts of 16 clubs within West Belfast, so it was a big GA community and a passionate area of the city for GA. So in St. Gall's, I had neighbours. I had neighbours either side of me, really, who were massive St. Gall's people. Their kids obviously played, and they were in around the same age as me, so it made that easier just to join St. Gall's.
Tell me a little bit about your family life. Who's in your family and what's their background and so on?
Again, very quiet family life growing up. Came from a family of 4. Myself, I was the only boy. I have a younger sister. Mum and dad, obviously, and with a quite a quiet and sheltered life growing up, considering the time of when it was and where it was and all the ongoings of the outside world. We went to good schools and we're mad into sport, playing everything, Gaelic, hurling for St. Gall's, playing soccer, even chanced my arm at Irish dancing and karate and everything. I was given 2 medals at Irish dancing and told not to come back. I don't think it was due to the dancing. I think it was more to do with being a bit of a joker or a messer. But no, it was all very quiet growing up. My dad was a milkman for over 30 years, and my mum was a civil servant and went on all our family holidays each year, and it was a pretty good life growing up.
So tell me a little bit about your GA career then, as you came out of your childhood and then into your teenagers up to this current day.
St. Gall's underage structures were light years ahead of, to be honest, most clubs in Antrim. That paid off eventually when we all came through at senior level. There was about 5 or 6 teams at the one time, all coming through, all being well coached and looked after well. And from no age we were getting in, winning championships from under 10 right up to senior football. and was part of the squad that won the All-Ireland Club Championship with St Gall's in 2010. From no age, all I wanted to do was play for St Gall's. With St Gall's in the brain, started off out the pitch. Slowly but surely just kept getting put into goals, and I used to go home crying to my mum and dad saying they were putting me in nets because it was rubbish, but they probably were but to convince me that it wasn't. It was because I was good at it, and then my height, I was quite tall, so I get into goals, and then I enjoyed not chasing people, running after players. I enjoyed just standing in goals, and you be a hero. A lot of forwards and all get the limelight, but it was a different sort of, making saves and saving penalties or whatever it may be, being the last line sort of thing. I enjoyed that. So played for Antrim then underage, under sort of 12 right up the senior football, and just stopped playing for Antrim there in 2018, just before I got and then just shortly after I got a bad injury there to my cruciate.
Nasty little injury that.
Yes.
You've been doing a lot of recovery since then, haven't you, after the operation?
It'll be almost 9 months here, probably next week, start of May maybe, so from the operation, and that's usually when you get signed off or the go-ahead to start playing again. And I just thought, I got the injury last year, obviously, during a match, and just being 33, 34 this year, you toy with the idea of just going, will that do me, or if you are going to do it, I have to do it properly. So I made sure I got a really good physio, and he's left no stone unturned from his end, and I've done the same from my end. So it's recovered really well. And when you're playing and you're so used to just playing, and I never really had any bad injuries over the last sort of 10 years. A couple of sprains here and there, but nothing sort of show stopping. And I think when you get an injury like that, where it just ends your season just like that, and sort of how long it takes to get back, that I took it for granted. I didn't take it for granted, I'm just going with the flow here, but when you're in that bubble, you very easily would go into cruise control, and you think you're the bionic man. But I think this will show me that I actually think I'm training more than I ever did, and I'll probably appreciate it more and be grateful for however long, I'm probably still relatively young for a goalkeeper as well, so for however long I can play, then I'll play till the body gives up.
Chris, something significant happened in your life not so long ago. Can you tell me about that?
You talk significant. I actually a big step was there. I let my other half, Maria, shave my hair there about 3 weeks ago, so it was significant too. But no, listen, it's probably well documented. I've been quite vocal about it. 7 years ago, my dad passed away of cancer, and I think it's like anyone losing their parent or losing anyone. I wasn't sort of prepared for it, for the after sort of math of it. I think it's quite common in males and Irish males in general that we're quite good at putting on a mask and letting on things are okay when they're not, and that's what I done, and it ended up leading me to dealing with depression and anxiety after my dad had passed away.
There's a tendencies in guys in particular to bottle everything up and not deal with stuff kind of head on. Talk to me about your experience with that and how you dealt with it.
So Dad passed away in February 2013. And my way, I didn't even ask anyone for advice or anything. I just threw myself back into training and playing, just for a routine. And I mean, literally, I went back to training the day after Dad's funeral, and then I played a match 2 days later. So I threw myself literally back into playing the matches. I was playing for Antrim at that stage, playing the National League, and then looking forward to Championship. So it kept me occupied in terms of routine, going to training and matches. And as time went on, the worse and worse I started to feel, because I would say more the anxiety was worse than nearly depression, because I was really good at making mountains out of molehills, probably like any males in people's lives too. They're good at making things out bigger than what they actually are. But I at that time I was working a temporary job, and I was just making things out worse. So if one wee thing went wrong, I was looking around, all my friends were getting married, getting houses, full-time jobs, and I was being really harsh on myself, and probably my self-talk to myself at that stage was really poor, really over the top, critical of myself. And probably about 6-7 months after Dad had passed away is where it really all sort of came to a head for me. The scary thing, probably looking back, is how good I was at putting on a mask, how good I was at nearly, not putting on an act, but I had, you have met me, like I've quite loud, and always joking, typical goalkeeper, messing, joking in the middle of the crack. So I was really good at putting that front on at training or at matches where people would never have known, but it was only when I was going home and closing my room door and just laying in bed. I got in a real bad habit of just laying in bed all the time. And it just came to a stage where I was just like, I just don't want to live like this anymore, and I didn't want to live in general. So I think when it gets to that stage, it's pretty scary. And I never attempted anything, but it was becoming the dominant thought in my mind, where I was like, I do not want to be here. So I was probably thinking of things like, how can I make this look like an accident? Trip out in front of traffic, or lose control of the car, or whatever it may be. I was thinking these crazy thoughts, and it was becoming the dominant thought all the time, and I just wanted to then do something about it, and I'm glad I did.
You're at that point now where you're probably your lowest point.
Uh-huh.
What was the steps that you took in order to get yourself out of there? You obviously identified that you were at that level.
Yeah.
So you asked for help. So how did you go about it?
It basically came to a head. We got beat by Monaghan in the Ulster Championship. It was actually the last game in Casement Park in Belfast, and went out with ones from my club who were on the Antrim panel at that stage. Went out that night, was 25, sort of as you do, straight after a match, lovely day. And then the next day, a load of the guys that were in around the same age as me, same thing. Come on, we'll go out. Everyone's booked off work. We'll go out, have a few drinks, make sort of a Monday club of it, so to speak. And I knew I woke up that day and was like, I get bad hangovers as it is, but it felt worse than a hangover. Just really emotional, drained physically, mentally, and went on out with him. And we were sitting having the crack, and every so often I'd be zoned out, and I could feel myself nearly zoned out, just going, I need to get out of here, and I don't want to be here on all fronts. I didn't want to be there, and then I just didn't want to be here in general. And I was like, I was just like fighting with myself, like arguing with myself when none of the rest would have known. And then I took myself just off the toilets, had a bit of a breakdown, I suppose. Really emotional. Jumped in a taxi, just went home, got into bed at 4:00 during the day, and the weather was the way it was now. Like, so, I mean, sun splitting the trees, and I'm lying with the curtains closed. The next day, woke up 2-day hangover, and I'm quite active on Twitter, and that was a real bad habit I got in as well, just constantly scrolling on social media. I was lying in my room, really bad habits, listening to, nearly depressing music as well to add to it nearly. And I came across actually the GPA, Gaelic Players Association, and they release every so often on their page like a helpline for their players, so northern players and southern players. And not long before that, I had read actually about my goalkeeper that played for Cavan, Alan O'Mara, had released a bit about himself, saying that he was feeling, he was going through depression, and it was completely different scenarios. Alan's was to do with football, and obviously mine's is to do with grief and losing a parent. But I rang the number, kept ringing, hanging up, kept ringing it and hanging up, and then eventually I just left it and let the guy, whoever it was, talk back. And then I told him, look, I'm not feeling great, and told him how I was feeling and what had happened, whatever it may be. And then they were able to get me set up with a counsellor then within 48 hours. So that was the sort of the start of it, sort of to try and combat it and do better from it.
And at this stage, did your mum and your family, or the rest of your family, realise what you're going through?
I'd say my mum probably would have known, like she would know me best. And it was just me and her in my house at that stage, because my sister moved to New York, so she would have probably knew. I wasn't at myself, but I did eventually tell her that how I was feeling, and probably at that stage that was probably the hardest thing to do, was tell my mum. And then she was worried about me constantly and nearly over the top texting or messaging, asking was he okay, or if I was leaving the house, where was it going, and so it was nearly felt bad for making her feel, making her worry, or make her sort of be on edge, thinking of me, like. But once I end up telling a handful of close friends as well, just so they knew. I found it hard anyway to avoid like going out on nights out, or to make up an excuse not to go out. So I just wanted to make people aware that this is what's happening, and that was a relief too, just being able to. I didn't say it in much detail. I just said basically I wasn't feeling great, and I wanted to avoid things like drinking. Alcohol just makes things worse. That was the start of it. Went to counselling for about a year. Again, first session was going to counselling. Went to a place in West Belfast, Clonard Monastery it was, big sort of church, and it was a wee quiet bit off it. So I met the guy there, and again, was trying to make excuses not to go in. And
did you go alone?
I went alone, yeah. Eventually went in then, and spent about 55 minutes just speaking about football, talking about Gaelic, whatever it may be, and then the last 5 minutes just threw in, I'm not feeling great, and it's on the back of my dad passing away, and I wanted to do something about it, and basically ran out of the room again. Yeah. And then as time went on, was divulging more and more into it, and went to counselling, as I say, for about a year, and then felt like I had not a brick wall with it, but like a plateau with it, where it just got to a stage where it was still raising its head with me, and was nowhere near as bad as it was, but still wanted to do more about it. So I tried CBT counselling, cognitive behavioural therapy, and went to it twice. Went for 6 sessions, and then a further 6 sessions or whatever it may be after a bit of time, and felt like it really helped me and helped me turn a corner with it all, because as I said earlier, my biggest problem was my irrational thinking, and it sort of teaches you ways to not make mountains out of molehills, and that it's okay to have a bad 20 minutes in a day, and just don't let it spiral into another day or a week or a month, and whatever happens there and then, just park it and move on. And I take that forward with me now, and I've only got better from it.
Bringing it back to the time when you told your friends and when you reached out to them, what type of reaction were you expecting at that given time from them?
For me, it was was me saying that they were probably in shock. Probably the biggest thing was that you would, the common phrase I got back was, you'd be the last person you'd ever think, because as I said, it's worrying that you can put on a mask and deflect away for people not to ever know what's going on or think what's going on. So I think they were sort of glad, obviously not sort of, but they were glad that I eventually did tell them, and obviously I got help and wanted to do something about it. And
when you reached out to your friends, was it like as if you were taking something off your back?
Once I went to the counselling and stuff, and I was able just to say it out loud, that was a massive weight off my shoulders. And then obviously saying to friends and all, they were probably more, not angry with me, but they were just like, you could have said, or, I was here. You could have spoke at any stage, and I know that now, but when you're in that sort of mindset and you're in that bubble, you don't want anyone knowing. So it's a difficult one, and probably one of the reasons why I went so public with my own story, being from West Belfast, such a high rate in male suicides. If I put myself out there, what I felt and how I was going through, that someone could take something from it, or go, do you know what? If he can go and get help, why can't I? And if it could help kickstart someone else's sort of journey, or give them that wee bit of courage to go and get help, then that's all I wanted to do from it.
And do you think that people have got stuff from it?
It's been just over 2 years now from I put it out there sort of online, and the feedback from it was crazy, because everyone's going to lose their parents at some stage. Some people have lost both, and some people are lucky that they haven't, but I think everyone can relate to it at some stage. A lot of people came back and said to me that they felt like they had wrote that themselves, that it sounded so similar and familiar, and it's probably what a lot of people have went through or are going to go through at some stage. And I think it's just making people aware that you don't have to get as low as that before, because it's a scary place where your mind can take you, and I think it's just putting a sort of things in place and surrounding yourself with good people and positive people that can help you along the way.
So what do you do now in terms of your coping strategies?
I suppose just, I'm lucky as well. My other half, Maria, is very supportive as well. And, I think just being rational in my thinking, that I don't have to make mountains out of molehills. If something happens, just, can't change it. I'm a big believer in exercise. I tried the counselling, CBT, and one of the best available drugs is exercise. So to try and stay as active as I can. Doesn't have to be a training session or whatever it may be, but just get into a good habit of going for a walk. And it helps clear the head, and I think just not keeping things to myself, speaking to people, whether it's Maria or my mum or friends or whatever it may be. I think the big thing is not letting it bottle up to a stage where you feel like it's going to explode.
And did you ever, throughout your journey, take medication for your depression?
I did. I tried the medication for a while, and for me, it didn't really work for me. But I know people that it works really well for. So it's all very individual. Big thing for me was as well, I couldn't sleep. My sleeping was really gone. Like I was in a real bad sleeping habit of laying awake to 4 or 5 in the morning, and then getting up for work at 7, trying to operate on 2 hours sleep, trying to manage myself as a county footballer and all at that stage, and it all just sort of added up and added to the sort of stress and everything else that I was thinking and going through.
You give a lot of talks. You have given a lot of interviews. You have probably been on all of the best known Irish websites out there in terms of news. Why do you continue to do that?
I suppose anytime I've been asked, I'll go, basically. And where I'm from, I was going to say where I live, but I've moved house now. I need to get that out of my head. But where I'm from in Belfast, and I suppose it's like any sort of major city, is suicide rates are higher. And in particular, West Belfast, where I've lived all my life, young men, it's really high rates in. And again, if it's just putting it out there that, somebody may be going through like a drug problem, alcohol addiction, relationship breakdowns, financial, worries, whatever it may be, that, if they can go, do you know what, there's somebody that's 6'5", played Gaelic football, had a really good life to date, if he can get help and go and get help, a joker in a changing room or a messer or whatever it may be, can go and get help, then why can't I? I suppose it's even more so now, in the sort of current climate that we're living in, is that, everyone's routines has been taken away from them. Sport has been cancelled. People have lost probably, the likes losing their jobs, are being furloughed, where they're having to work from home, and it's something they're not used to. I think it's just putting messages out there that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to feel low at these situations. It's just not letting yourself get down to that sort of really low level where you start questioning your existence. And I think why I do it is just to try and help as many people as I can. And it's sort of not in a cheesy way, but somebody had said to me before, are these saves more important than the saves you make on the pitch? And if you can help one person then along the way, then that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you give talks in schools. I would be very interested to see what type of feedback you get from young male students. Do they engage, or do they just sit there and listen?
It can be daunting at times, because you could be going into a hall or a classroom of maybe 30 plus young fellas who could be all lively. I know what it's like to be at that age as well, and once you start speaking, they all can relate to it, because they've all either got, they've all either went through it themselves at a young age, or they all have a dad in their lives. So I think once you can sort of relate to it, that it could happen. That could happen to me at any stage, or he's standing up there now, and he played for St Gall's, a very successful St Gall's team during the 2000s. Played and captained Antrim at a stage as well, and he's able to stand there and tell what he went through in order to try and help others. Then that means a lot too, like.
Absolutely.
And that would be a lot of the feedback that would come back, like, whether it's a day or so or weeks later, somebody made message on social media and just say, listen, I was at such and such, and that really give me a kick up the backside to go and get help. And so I always say to people, like, I'm not an expert, I'm just sharing an experience, and if people can relate to it, then brilliant.
And have a few people reached out to you on social media?
Yeah, and it's a lot more. I think nowadays there's a lot more sort of issues in society. One of the biggest things that people deal with is gambling addictions, and everything is so accessible now, through our phones, through laptops, tablets. It's so easy to get access to anything now. You can gamble online. You could sit and watch TV, and you could gamble your life away. And thankfully, myself, it's something I have never. It's an issue I've never had myself, but knowing people and knowing how prevalent it is in Irish society now too. It's a worrying one, is how easy and accessible it is for people, especially on smartphones.
It'd be very interesting to see has that gambling curtailed over the emergency, that being COVID-19, because of obviously not too many matches taking place. I mean, obviously there's the online games element to it. Maybe out of all of this badness in terms of what's happening to society right now, maybe there might be some good out of it too, that maybe people will have time to reflect on themselves and their behaviours and the way in which they react to things, Definitely. It's like, you hear a lot of negativity in the media and on social media or whatever it may be about the negative side of COVID-19, but it's, you can, if you flip it on its head, you'd be like, well, I've all this time now to do something that I've always wanted to do, whether it's like an online course or, I'll take up running, or I'll do X, Y, and Z. I'll learn how to cook or bake or whatever it may be. So it's just seeing the positive in it too. That, as you say, somebody that might be dealing with a gambling addiction and constant sport on the TV or on the radio or Twitter feeds or Facebook feeds, whatever it may be, suddenly that's not there. That might help someone, or might be like, well, I've nothing to gamble on, I can keep my money, or I've nothing to go out and drink and watch matches or horse racing or whatever it may be. So that could help. In relation to your own future, so you're recently engaged, isn't that right, to be married?
Yes, I'm due to get married this year. Yep. In November.
Oh, very good. So towards the back end of the year, hopefully that will happen for you in all of this. Where are you getting married?
in Castle Leslie.
Oh, lovely. Really
So
nice spot.
In Monaghan. So not my choice. I hadn't a clue about it all. I was just facilitating and being dead on about it. But yeah, no, listen, we've just recently moved house. Getting married this year, as I say. Really looking forward to getting back playing. Just take it from there, and I'm looking forward to it all.
And you've done amazing recovery, because I follow you on Instagram and I know how hard that you've been working to get back right again. It hasn't been easy.
Listen, yes, it's a crazy injury. Until it happens, till you, it's hard to actually explain it, because I always heard and have really close friends who it's happened to, and you're like, could it be that bad as they're making out, or could it be that long and tedious? And we have an app where we can log our sessions on, and I've done 147 sessions from the operation. So,
wow.
And that's just to get back to a stage where I feel like I could partake in full training now. It's healed really well, as I say. I was very lucky. I knew a good physio. He's a fella, Shea McAleer. He's the current Armagh physio, but he used to work in professional sport with Munster and Exeter in the rugby, so he was pretty tuned in, and it makes a big difference as well, even psychologically, knowing that someone like himself is giving you the rehab, and it's been really good. From recovered really quickly. Was ahead of schedule and on loads of scores where you want to hit. So I've done everything I was asked, and I'm looking forward to getting back.
And would you like to get back into the inter-county fold again?
Do you know what? I wouldn't say no. I just love playing. I love playing games. The problem is with inter-county now is it's just getting out of hand in terms of training and whatever it may be. But I suppose, I don't know. If I was asked, I probably would I could still do a job, of course. I think that I wouldn't play if I didn't think that in general. So whatever. Well, don't know when that'll happen. I might make Antrim over 40s now. The time the seasons and all, and matches and all start back up. So.
Do you think football is in doubt for the rest of 2020?
It's just hard, isn't it? It's nobody really knows. And it's just the other day where they're saying no events over 5,000 people before August, so it puts the inter-county season up in the air. The end of the league was scrapped, where teams were going up and fighting relegation or whatever it may be. And
what happens with that now? Do they all just remain as is?
I don't know. They're saying I've heard different things where they've said they have to finish the season, or I've heard one say no, that's the National League sitting until next year, and then it'll be Championship. And obviously in the south as well, the GA is massive on the economy down there as well, and I'd say they'll be eager to get games back, but it's going to be a hard one, because a lot of people will just be like, we'll go back training and playing, but some people's households are different, and they'll maybe be a bit wary about getting into a change room with 30 plus fellas and then going and making physical contact with 30 other fellas in a game, and then plus that's not even taking consideration, crowds, supporters, and
stuff,
5,000. There's every championship match would be over 5,000 people at
Absolutely.
I think at this rate, by the time GA comes back, a junior B match could have about 10,000 people at it. People would just be choking to watch any sport. So
I think you might be right.
So it's a harder one, but hopefully it does resume this year at some stage, and you would hope that they can let players know sooner than later as well, sort of what their plans are or what they sort of are foreseeing. It could mean players could be training for 2 years straight with no sort of downtime, because people are training hard on their own, and then you go straight back into playing this year, and then you could be straight back in again in January for 2021. So I think if the decisions need to be made sooner rather than later for people, and if anything, club might go ahead rather than county, just because of crowds.
It'll be a tough one, but it'll be interesting to see what way it goes. Chris, what are your goals and dreams for the future?
My goals and dreams, probably moved into a lovely new house in Armagh. getting married this year, say, looking forward to it, and really looking forward to getting back playing and playing for as long as I can, and for St. Gall's, and whatever else happens.
Do you reckon there's a book in you?
A book in me? No way. No.
I reckon there will be a little bit of a book in you.
A book could be. It would need to be vetted heavily. Nah, don't know. I just take it as it comes now. Just each day as it comes, and just whatever it'll be. Like I'm doing a degree at the minute again as well. Like so.
Are you? What are you studying?
I'm doing strength and conditioning in Satanta College in Thurles. Wow. So it's actually a good time for all this happening. So it gives you a bit of time to do the studying and do assignments and stuff like. So just looking forward to whatever the future holds, and hopefully everyone and as many people come out of this pandemic, unscathed, both physically and mentally, because people's health is more important than any sport, like so.
Most certainly is. It most certainly is. And my final question for you now is, who do you admire in the sporting world? It can be Ireland, it can be international, wherever. Who will be your person you admire?
I'd say I have a hero in every sport, but I'm a big Johnny Sexton fan, with Leinster and Ireland. GA circles, because you play against most of them, or you burn your bridges against most of them.
You're a big fan of Morgan there.
Yes, I am. I do enjoy watching Niall and Rory. I know Cluxton's obviously a legend, and what he's done with Dublin, and how long he's played the game and at that level, and the way he's changed himself too, from being sort of a bit of a loose cannon to sort of start with, and he's completely ice cold now the last load of years, and it reflects in that current Dublin team, you can just admire him and what they have done, and even watching the two boys, Niall and Rory, are taking it to another level. I'm a few years older than both of them, but can do nothing but admire them. They're again changing the role of the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper would have been very much, either you're useless out the pitch or you're carrying a bit more weight, and you're getting into goals. And these boys are going down a different route, altogether. They could play probably out the field for their county and club, and they're making the position really attractive. For young boys and girls growing up, going, God, there's Niall Morgan's, making saves, and Rory begging the same, but they're going up the other end of the pitch and kicking points from not only frees now, but both of them are scoring from play too, which is, it's great to see. So
it's almost unheard of, really, of GA of old. Yeah,
both of them, and that's why it's very easily to get carried away with. Listening to media and all that, but I love watching both of them at both ends of the pitch. People get carried away with their point kicking and all, but as goalkeepers they're excellent as well. So two lads are very good as well. Enjoy watching them.
We might get them on the podcast soon. You never know.
Yes.
Well, listen, Chris, you've been really insightful. I love your message on mental health. It's incredibly important. I know you don't give advice, you just tell your story, and that's pretty cool. And I wish you the very best of luck with your wedding later this year, yes, and your recovery and back into hopefully some type of a game for you. But I've no doubt you're going to rock the socks as soon as you get into goal, because you've got fire in your belly now, I think. You're ready.
I do. I'm looking forward to it.
That was Emer McCormack speaking to Chris Kerr on the Kish podcast. And Emer, he's had such a roller coaster life at such a young age.
Very much so. And you know what? He's actually great at telling the story. I think there's many people out there that maybe could relate with Chris. And I think the most inspirational part of it all is that he recognised himself that he needed to speak to somebody. And I think if anybody out there got to that point where, they kind of said, look, I can't cope with this anymore, that there's no shame to that.
No.
Just ask for help, The fact that he reached out to his friends initially and their reaction, and then going for professional help. And like, look, Chris doesn't come out as being, you know, an expert in terms of dealing with mental health, and he doesn't give advice. All he does is tell his story. And I think it's really important that, you know, if you...
And how he coped with it.
Yeah, and how he coped with it, absolutely. And look, you know, if anybody is feeling that way, that they just can't cope anymore, like, and, you know, especially with the current times that we're in, you know, just reach out, have a chat. Sometimes it can only be down to a chat, you know.
And you do have plenty of services out there that are doing it all completely for free. I mean, the likes of like the Samaritans and stuff.
Here to House and all of those amazing organisations that are out there. And then, you know, local clubs as well. You know, don't underestimate the power of the club movement, that if somebody has an issue that they can't confide in a coach or, you know, a coxswain or whoever it is within an organisation.
It's like your family away from your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And just say, look, I'm not really coping, you know. So I really like Chris's story, and the main reason why is because he came from the darker times into more happier coping times, and is now getting out there and telling the story to help others, you know, go through the same experience. And yeah, that's very commendable. He's still a young lad, you know, he's in his late 20s.
Wow.
Still has got his whole life ahead of him. You know, he's getting married. There's so many things to look forward to, but it just goes to show that the mind is vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you mind it. I love that story. Chris is a very, very nice guy, and I was delighted that he agreed to come on the show.
Next week, though, it's a bit of a change.
Next week, we are just a bunch of messers. Myself, Tony Scott and Wallace Bird. Wallace Bird, that being an absolute ledge ball. So she's going to join us on the...
She is a legend.
She is a legend. And she's going to join us on the show.
That's next Monday, by the way. The 11th of May, when that's going to be released.
The 11th of May?
Oh, today, by the way, May the 4th. Today's Star Wars Day.
Yeah, I'm not into that. Just being honest, do you know what I mean?
Like that, I'm not into that.
Not into that.
May the 4th be with you. Before we do go, I have a couple of fans who I need to give a shout out to. So I want to say a big hello to Jerry, who is in Mayo. Jerry loves the voice. So thank you, Jerry, for that lovely compliment.
That's my mum.
Yeah. I was trying to disguise
her name is Geraldine.
I didn't want to embarrass the woman.
You better out her now and say that it's my mum.
Hello, Geraldine.
She listened to it. So, Tony, we have lots to look forward to on The Kish.
What is the best way to get in touch with us?
TheKishPodcast.com, or you can go onto Facebook and just search for The Kish Podcast, or just Google us, The Kish Podcast, and send us a little message. We read all of our messages, so do send them because it encourages us to push on. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please, please, please just give us an hour review and maybe share it on your own social platforms and say, look, have a listen to this, it's really cool. So, yeah.
And if we become famous, we might start our own YouTube channel.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. I mean, like, I've got a face for radio, really, more than I do YouTube, but I'll give it a lash.
The older I get, the prettier I get.
Same as myself. A good bottle of wine.
For the audience.
Yeah. Anyway, Tony, good luck.
Goodbye to you.
I'll talk to you next week.
We'll talk to each other in between, but yeah.
Well, we will, yeah.
And don't forget to wash your hands.
Wash your hands.